We're kicking off with Dynamite, as the go-home show before AEW World's End had a big surprise, as the main event ROH Tag Title match pitting MJF and Samoa Joe against the Devil's Goons was far from simple. MJF made his way to the ring for that main event, but Samoa Joe did not. And in a backstage video, Joe was rolling around on the ground in pain, seemingly another victim of the Devil and his minions. MJF did the match anyway, but it didn't take long for a third minion to show up and hit MJF with a steel pipe before MJF took his own finishing move and the pinfall to lose the ROH World Tag Team titles. This was a shock, but the action wasn't over, as post-match, Samoa Joe came out to help MJF, but then the Devil's Masked minions left as the ROH World Tag Team Champions. On screen, the Devil appeared with text reading, "Pleasure doing business with you," and Samoa Joe eyed MJF's bandaged shoulder before whacking him with a steel chair. Attacking MJF, Joe said, "I did this to you," and while we can't say for certain what he's confessing to, this was a surprising way to end the final Dynamite before World's End. Fans on social media weren't fans though, and completely blasted Tony Khan and the company for this shocker, labeling it as one of the worst stories and making no sense. One theory circulating online is that Joe is working with the Devil, who many predict is Adam Cole, who has been exaggerating or possibly straight up lying about his injury. Those of you who have a keen memory may recall that it was Cole who told MJF to accept Samoa Joe's challenge, and if the two are in cahoots, things are playing out perfectly. Do you think Cole will be revealed as the Devil, or is somebody else pulling the strings? Let us know your prediction in the comments. It's reported that those currently portraying the Devil's henchmen on TV are those who AEW have planned to be revealed, which has led to plenty of fans examining the body types of the masked men. With the Devil's Goons now the ROH Tag Team Champions, speculation has only grown as to who they really are, with two potential teams being shared among fans. Some fans think that the new champions are Matt Taven and Mike Bennett, while others suspect Red Dragon, which are both teams associated with Adam Cole. Others have suggested the Guns or the Young Bucks could be part of the Goons, and one henchman taller than the rest is suspected of being Wardlow by many fans, but we can't say for certain. Nevertheless, this turn of events does make the upcoming World Championship bout between MJF and Samoa Joe a must-watch encounter as we move towards the World's End pay-per-view. What are your thoughts on Samoa Joe turning on MJF? Sound off in the comments. At this week's Boxing Day live event in Madison Square Garden, CM Punk competed for the first time in a decade for WWE and defeated Dominic Mysterio. The show was a huge success on paper, with the event breaking the record for the highest gate of any non-televised WWE event, and those in charge are very happy with how things went down. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select reports that WWE was pleased with the buzz that the Garden show got in general, as there was a lot of excitement online about Punk's return match. The report also noted that WWE hit the merchandise stands heavy with CM Punk merchandise for the MSG show, so WWE is still moving a lot of the best in the world's merch. The match between CM Punk and Dominic Mysterio not only filled the venue at Madison Square Garden, but also garnered substantial online viewership, extending the reach of the event. In fact, the match has been so popular online that it may end up being aired by WWE, as the report adds that WWE had cameras at the MSG show, and parts of the show could end up airing later. It wasn't just WWE fans who were happy to see Punk back in the ring, as on Instagram, AEW's Chris Jericho responded to a WWE shared video of Punk's return and said, "Congrats!" Punk's return to WWE may go down as one of the greatest returns in wrestling history when all is said and done, but a notable backstage name wasn't around to see things in person. Fightful's report noted that Vince McMahon wasn't at the MSG show, which isn't the way things used to be, but McMahon obviously doesn't have the same position he had a year ago. Vince McMahon never missed an important show, especially at Madison Square Garden. And while he has many roles with WWE, being present at live events clearly isn't one of them anymore. Ahead of this week's AEW Dynamite, fans retreated to a dark match which saw the Guns, Matt Menard, and Jake Hager lose to the Acclaimed, Daddy Ass, and in a surprise, Scotty to Hotty. Scotty serves as a coach for AEW, and his in-ring debut for the company was a huge shock, and we now know more about this surprise appearance. Fightful Select confirmed that while he wrestles on the indies on a semi-regular basis, this was Scotty's AEW in-ring debut, but he's been considered for matches in the past. Scotty has been open to performing in AEW in addition to being a coach, and AEW has the rights to use the original Too Cool theme, which was used for his appearance. AEW sources said that his theme was part of the music library AEW licensed to get access to the Hardy Boys theme, and that Hardcore and Crash Holly's original theme is also included in that. Scotty 2 Hotty looked in great shape for his AEW debut, and it sounds like this won't be his last time competing. And what did you make to the ex-WWE star's AEW debut? More from AEW Dynamite now, as this week's show was the go-home show before World's End and saw a huge return in the form of Sammy Guevara. During an in-ring segment with his family, Don Callis once again got under the skin of fans and proceeded to present Konosuke Takeshita, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Kyle Fletcher with portraits. We have to give a shout out to artist Mel Coleman, whose work in the portraits for Callis and numerous other angles and moments in AEW is always extraordinary. That was before Guevara returned after missing months with a concussion, and despite getting the most positive reaction he's had in a long time, Guevara didn't look amused. Guevara said it was a case of long time no see to Callis, who then unveiled a painting depicting Guevara holding his new child while the Don Callis family were around him. Guevara was not happy about his baby being on the poster, and he got in Don Callis' face about it, leading to a "you f***ed up" chant from the audience. Callis fired back, saying Sammy isn't mentally ready to be a parent before the Spanish God was jumped by Powerhouse Hobbs, and it'd be Chris Jericho and his bat Floyd who'd make the save. This angle felt very rushed, and the sudden arrival of Big Bill and Ricky Starks to attack Jericho and Guevara, followed by the arrival of Sting and Darby Allin, only added to the rushed feeling. Tony Khan had to come up with something for the tag title scene given Kenny Omega's recent bout with diverticulitis, but this rushed through weeks of storytelling with Guevara and Jericho. It would have been easier to just book Sting and Allin against Starks and Big Bill for the titles and leave Jericho out of the equation until Kenny Omega can return, as he's already established heat with the champs. This was a big return for Sammy Guevara, and it also cemented his alliance with Jericho once again, and we'll have to see what's next for Sammy now that he's out of the Don Callis family. Continental Classic action now, as Jon Moxley defeated Jay White and Swerve Strickland in the finals of the Gold League to earn his spot in the Classic finals at World's End. Moxley overcame a knee injury to outlast the other two, both of whom took their shots at the injured joint before Moxley fought back and hit the Death Rider before pinning White. Strickland cut a post-match promo in which he challenged Keith Lee to a match Saturday at World's End, immediately giving him a new program to work with. As for the triple threat, the match felt like a pay-per-view quality bout, and the energy was there, the crowd was red hot, and the combatants brought aggression to their performances. With that said, Moxley winning was the least interesting choice, as he's already one of the most decorated stars in AEW history, and he wins more matches than he doesn't. With White and Strickland on the cusp of that next level, it wouldn't have done any damage for Mox to lose the match, but we'll soon see Moxley in the finals at World's End. 2 weeks ago, Liv Morgan was arrested for possession of under 20 grams of marijuana, possession of drug equipment, and possession of a drug which would be a synthetic cannabinoid. Morgan was arrested but quickly posted bail, and her court date will be in February 2024, and now we know much more about the circumstances behind her arrest. In an updated arrest record, it is stated that Morgan did not possess a medical marijuana card, which would have allowed her to own the drugs legally. The report also confirmed that she was pulled over when her vehicle could not remain in one lane, and that she was seen crossing over the yellow and white lines on the roadway several times. When the officer on the scene, Sergeant Otero, pulled her over, he immediately smelled marijuana coming from the vehicle, and Deputy E. Hillman arrived as Otero spoke to the wrestler. After searching the vehicle, and a small bag of a green leafy substance was found in a pink fuzzy bag, while the potential synthetic substance oil was located in a vape pen within the center console. A field test of both the leaves and the oil all yielded positive for marijuana, and after being read her Miranda rights, Morgan was cooperative and admitted that the leafy substance was hers. As for the vape pen, Morgan said that it must belong to somebody that she's transported recently, as she travels with a lot of people, and that she doesn't vape. Morgan was subsequently placed under arrest, but this isn't expected to affect her WWE plans, as she's currently out with an injury and hasn't been on TV for months. WWE already had her figured out for a 2024 return, and that doesn't appear to have changed, and it's been reported that there's little to no heat on Morgan for this situation. Morgan is out of custody, but this legal matter isn't over yet, and what do you make of her arrest situation? Let us know in the comments section. In the main event of WWE's MSG show, Seth Rollins retained the World Heavyweight Championship against Drew McIntyre in another tough loss for the Scottish Warrior. McIntyre has been obsessed with winning a world title in front of a live crowd, and winning the Golden MSG would have been incredible, and Drew had a unique exit from the ringside area. In hilarious footage being shared online, McIntyre can be seen being carried away by a very strong security guard who should consider a career in the ring himself with all that strength. McIntyre is hoping for better luck next week on the Day 1 edition of Raw when he'll challenge Rollins again, but should he lose, he'll hopefully have another strong guard to whisk him backstage. It was at this week's Dynamite that a violent backstage brawl broke out, but fortunately for Tony Khan, this time it was a fight that was supposed to happen. In a backstage interview with Lexi Nair, Adam Copeland and Christian Cage were supposed to sit down and talk about their upcoming TNT title match, but that didn't go to plan. While Cage was ready to talk, Copeland wasted no time in attacking his former friend, and while security tried to intervene, Copeland took them out before heading to the hallway. Despite multiple people trying to stop him, Copeland continued to land punches on Cage and even chased him down in the hallway before things finally settled. Copeland and Cage were once as close as brothers, but now they're bitter rivals, and we'll have to see who leaves World's End as the AEW TNT champion. In the Blue League Finals, Eddie Kingston and Bryan Danielson blew up several Best Match of the Year lists with their epic encounter, which saw Kingston get the win over the Dragon. Kingston overcame a match full of verbal insults and mind games conducted by Danielson, showing the toughness and resiliency that have long been a part of his character. He withstood Danielson's devastating offense before winning with a series of spinning back fists and a Kawada-inspired powerbomb, and the crowd were behind Kingston throughout. The fans' emotional investment in Kingston was rewarded with his victory over Danielson, who had openly mocked the ROH champ and the notion that he could defeat him. This was a superb example of an intensely physical match meshing with a storyline that was easy to follow and care about with great action, and now Kingston has a huge match ahead at World's End. During the pandemic, AEW operated outside of the Daily's place in Jacksonville, Florida, with some of the company's biggest moments taking place at that very venue. For their January 10th show, AEW will return to its old stomping ground, but tickets for the show are hardly flying out. WrestleTix reports that with just days before the show, there are still 587 tickets left, which is far higher than you'd expect for an AEW show this close to happening. Not only that, but the show will have a much smaller crowd than before, as this show, even if it sells out, will have 2,511 fans. That is around half the number that attended the Fight for the Fallen event in January 2019, which had an attendance of 5,000 fans and shows a serious decline in interest for AEW. Jacksonville, Florida is a massively important city to AEW, as it was where the company was first announced, but right now, the interest just isn't there for the January 10th Dynamite. Ever since his WWE contract expired in December 2022, Bill Goldberg has been on the hunt for one last match before calling it a career once and for all. Some have speculated that Goldberg could always return to WWE and have his last match in the company, but that's unlikely to happen, especially after what he said this week. Speaking to Steven and Captain Evil on their show, Goldberg said that he had COVID when he faced Roman Reigns at Elimination Chamber 2022 and realistically shouldn't have gone to the show. Goldberg said he'd agree to the match if WWE gave him a retirement match, and while he performed as expected, WWE didn't hold up their end of the alleged bargain. The WWE Hall of Famer only got angrier from there and took aim at Vince McMahon by bluntly stating, "Vince is a piece of shit as far as I'm concerned." Whether Goldberg gets that elusive last match he can end his career on, time will tell, but it appears that his relationship with WWE may never be fixed after what had transpired last year in Saudi Arabia. WWE's Boxing Day show saw the in-ring return of Sami Zayn in his first match after being written off TV with an attack by Drew McIntyre, and the Canadian was thrilled to be back. On Instagram, Zayn shared a photo and made it clear he was happy to be back in the Garden, and while he and Jey Uso didn't win the tag titles, simply returning to MSG was a win for the Canadian. On Dynamite, Ruby Soho was asked about her upcoming Rampage match with Marina Shafir, but before she could say anything, Saraya interrupted with a special gift. That gift for Solo turned out to be Harley Cameron, who was very excited to be there, but Solo took a call from Angelo Parker before she and Harley had a chance to talk. When Renee Paquette asked Saraya how she managed to get Cameron, the Australian pulled out a knife, shocking Saraya and Renee in a truly bizarre segment on this week's show. Mariah May was also on this week's Dynamite, and she confirmed that she'll be making her in-ring debut on the first AEW Dynamite of 2024. Her moment was cut short by Riho, who chased down May in revenge for Mariah attacking her last week, and we'll have to see who Mariah May faces in her AEW in-ring debut. In women's action, Skye Blue defeated Kris Statlander in another setback for the former TBS champ, and it's safe to say that Blue might be the most improved wrestler in AEW in 2023. So that was this week's Dynamite, and the instant classic between Danielson and Kingston was easily the highlight of a show that did a solid job building World's End. That's even more impressive when you reflect on how World's End was mostly thrown together at the last minute, though Dynamite ended with a thud with that ROH tag title change. A very good show in a bubble. It'll be interesting to see what exactly goes down Saturday night and how Tony Khan builds on it moving forward. AEW's creative has felt lacking as of late, but World's End has the potential to provide a rest, and hopefully the company takes advantage of it, as there's a lot of pieces to create compelling stories around.